I just wanted to say that, what a difference a year makes. Obviously we had to cancel the tournament. You may recall we were the first conference that did cancel, and we didn't know what others would do, but we felt we were making the right decision, but it was certainly a tense time. This year, of course, we're not over the pandemic. Obviously, it's been, we have to keep things in perspective. It's obviously been a national tragedy. We're happy that we've been able to play, that our student athletes have had an opportunity to play. We brought 21 teams here, and it looks like we're going to finish with all 21 teams being able to play and to compete and to have champions in both women's and men's. We absolutely love this arena. We think Dickies Arena is one of the best in the country. It's a great venue for both of our men's and women's teams. I want to thank Matt Homan, the general manager. He's been absolutely terrific, and we've had to work out a testing protocol. We've done over 2,000 tests, and we haven't had a positive test, which is really a remarkable tribute to our student athletes and our coaches and our administrators. And I want to thank Brian Thornton, who runs our basketball, men's and women's, and Scott Draper. Scott arranged our testing, and Scott did that for football too. And he's done just a remarkable job. I want to thank Bobby Wagand and Patrick Colbert and their team. If I try to mention everyone, I'll forget somebody, but they also handle our Olympic sports, and they've done a really terrific job with the venue here. And Dr. Greg Stewart at Tulane has been here almost the entire week, kind of supervising all the testing, and he is the head of our medical advisory group. And they have done, again, I put a lot of accolades all around because they've done a great job in football and basketball. And even when we didn't play, it was because of an abundance of caution, because they were very careful. He's being here all week was really, a lot of his time has been devoted to this. And I want to thank him for the great job he's done. Also, our athletic directors, our players, and our coaches deserve all the credit, because again, they had to not only, stay free of the virus, which of course is sometimes just a luck of the draw. It can happen. It's a very transmissible disease. We all know. I want to sound trite. And we know it can happen at any point, but I know they took tremendous precautions. I know our staff set up the hotel situation here and all the different, things that we did around the arena. So knock on wood, we hope that we can get through the game and then obviously get through the week for the teams that will go to Indianapolis. And we're obviously hoping to have, more than one team qualify. We don't know yet what's going to happen. But I can open it for questions. We are coming back to Dickies. We have a multi-year deal. We're coming back next year, and we're really excited because next year we hope the pandemic's behind us and we can have fans. And I think if we do, I think we'll have good crowds because five of our schools are within pretty easy driving distance, and a few others are not far away. So with the kind of basketball we now have in this conference, I think is going to improve year to year with the great coaches and programs we have. I think Dickies is going to be a great venue for the next few years. So I'll open it up to questions. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, we'll take questions at this time. If you have a question, please just use the raise hand feature in the Zoom, and we'll try to get to you in here.
Yeah, the one thing I didn't mention, Chuck, is obviously congratulations to Houston and Cincinnati. I mean, they're in our championship game. Everybody knows that, of course, but I didn't mention that. But we're looking forward to a terrific game. Cincinnati is peaking at the right time, and we all know how good Houston is. And that was a war yesterday. That was quite a battle between Memphis and Houston. Those are two excellent teams. And nobody can tell me that Memphis isn't a tournament team after that game.
We'll take our first question from Sam Blum from the Dallas Morning News, please.
Hi, Sam.
How's it going, Mike? And then thanks, Chuck. I appreciate this, great operation you guys had this week. I'm curious if you kind of rewind back to February 6th. East Carolina played Memphis that day. And then 2 days later, East Carolina played SMU, and then they all kind of went on a pause, went on a long break. What do you feel like happened in that little stretch right there? And, obviously how much of an impact do you feel like it had, given that, Memphis and SMU, two teams that, probably could have played their way in, looking like they might not make it now?
Sam, you don't really know what happened. I mean, the virus is the virus, and, it's going to hit programs at different times and for different reasons. I mean, they've taken all the precautions, and SMU had a great run through the football season and then ran into some issues at the end. And then obviously in basketball, both East Carolina, SMU, and obviously we had some other teams as well. It did have an impact. There's no question. I mean, certainly SMU has a very good team, and obviously weren't able to play for roughly a month. Their coach, I don't think has coached since the middle of January. We hope Tim is well now. I think he is, but it was really unfortunate. But Sam, there's just no way to tell. But it did have an impact without question. And, it had an impact as we had to schedule late in the year, as you know. We had it's difficult when you try to make up games. You run out of real estate eventually. So it had an impact on everyone, to be honest with you. I mean, Wichita was supposed to play SMU twice and obviously wasn't able to.
And then just generally, obviously you mentioned wanting to get more than one team. And where do I know you love making the case for your teams. What's kind of the case for Wichita State, Memphis, and some of these teams that are maybe on the bubble?
Yeah, I think that Memphis is won 7 of their last 9. The only 2 losses were they really came on, and I know the committee kind of weighs all the games equally, but I think it's important when a team improves during the year. The only 2 losses were if everyone concedes, and I think everyone will, that Houston's one of the best teams in the country and deserves either a 1 or 2 seed and could go a long way in the tournament. When you see the way Memphis played them, Sam, I mean, they could have won both games, and one of them was away. Obviously, the other is in a high-pressure tournament environment, and they were great games. And Memphis, I think, is a tournament team. Wichita won our league. They were our regular season champions. This is a good league. I mean, this is, what do they call it? The Power 7 sometimes. They don't really use that term much in basketball, but the truth is, with our pedigree, we're a major conference, and we've got good teams. We had obviously even the teams. We had no teams with a net higher than 175, and some of the other conferences in the P5 can't say that. I can think of a couple that can't say that. We have much more balance than we've ever had in the conference. It's a good conference. Sure, it's a surprise when an East Carolina beats a Houston, but with Jaden Gardner and the great players, and a great coach and, Joe Dooley, it's not that big a surprise sometimes to see an upset. So I just think the conference is strong. And I think Wichita winning the regular season, winning a game in the tournament, losing a really close game to a streaking Cincinnati team that's really good right now. I think they've made a case to be in the tournament. We didn't, no one had the ability to play as many non-conference games as they wanted to this year, and that's going to certainly be a factor. But I just think this conference plays good basketball. You see a lot of athleticism on the court, and we'll see what the committee decides. Historically, Tulsa a few years ago, back in 2006, wasn't on anybody's radar, right? And they ended up getting in the first 4. So you just never know how the committee is going to evaluate. Thanks, Sam.
We'll take the next one from Patrick Johnson from 94.3 The Game in Greenville.
Okay, there we go. Hello, Commissioner. How are you? Good
Hello,
to talk
Patrick.
to you again, and thank you, Chuck. Wanted to a couple of things, and Sam did touch on it there. One, how nobody got to play, as you said, the amount of non-conference games, which help build a resume potentially. But I mean, how does the league get back to 3 to 4 to 5 teams? Is it a scheduling thing? What would you say the league's role is in that as well?
Yeah, Patrick, that's a great question because, Brian Thornton is our new head of basketball operations, and the vice president for men's and women's basketball. And one of the charges, of course, is, okay, what can we do to help our programs, to help our athletic directors? We have made the investment, in basketball. We made a huge investment in football. As you know, we had to be as good in football as we are to be considered a true P5 contender or P6 contender down the road. But in basketball, part of it is scheduling, and we do have that alliance with the SEC. We're still looking for a challenge. We're trying to get as many good games as we possibly can. We have a good relationship with the SEC. We're part of the officiating consortium with the SEC. So clearly non-conference scheduling is important, but I think the main thing is getting really good coaches in place. And I think we really do have good coaches right now, Patrick. It takes time sometimes to build a program, to get some veterans in there. Our teams are very young. And when you look at Ron Hunter and Joe Dooley and Brian Gregory's done a fine job at USF. You have Johnny Dawkins, and we know what he's already done at UCF. And, we've got obviously our veteran coaches, and Penny Hardaway showed and turned that team around, so there's a bright future for Memphis. Penny's always going to recruit good players. Isaac Brown, again, Isaac, nobody even knew whether Isaac would ultimately be the permanent coach, and look at the job he's done. John Brandon had to change the whole culture of a program and a different style of play. Really important to mention that, because it's hard to do that. And his team seems to be gelling. I do think we've got, just a lot of good coaches in place. Obviously, when you have Kelvin, the dean of our coaches, that program is going to be a top program every year. But if you look around, Frank Haith is a veteran coach, and every now and then, Tulsa has a veteran team, a lot of seniors, and they really perform well. This is a good league. Aaron McKee is again, Aaron has just gotten started and just really, it's only his second year. And the other last thing I'll say too is, I mentioned Joe Dooley earlier. I hope I didn't leave anyone out, but the point is, COVID, this is a year you sort of have to, in some ways, look beyond, because it's a COVID year. It's an odd year. It really affected everybody differently. It affected everybody, psychologically, emotionally, the testing, all the different pressures on everyone, the inability to play certain games. Like Wichita, for example, had, 9 games, either postponed or canceled. Not one of them involved them with a positive test. Houston had that issue in football. They went 5 or 6 weeks being ready to play, and then their opponent couldn't play because of COVID. So that affects the team. SMU in the tournament hadn't played in a month. And you're rusty when that happens. It's been shown when teams came off a long layoff this year, they didn't really do as well as they would normally do. So I think you have to look beyond this year. But I'm optimistic about our basketball. I think this is the best collective group of coaches that we've had. We're going to see, how we can help in terms of recruiting. And, COVID's going to change some things. I think you're going to see more virtual recruiting down the road. I don't want to get into the weeds on the discussion about that, but I certainly think that, a lot of the things that probably have favored some of the bigger programs are going to be maybe changed. Maybe you won't have as much private jet travel. Maybe you're going to find that even some of the events may not, necessarily be held the way they were. So we just have to figure out, what our recruiting base is, how we recruit. I think we've done a good job scheduling this year, got bollocksed up, but maybe in the future it won't. And I think the league outlook is bright. I really do.
I got a couple of things I can follow up on, but I want to take a lot of time here. As far as, we certainly are aware, Dave, who I see on here, and myself are aware of VCU's situation with athletics right now and the hole they're in financially. There are obviously some big budget programs in the league that reportedly are having some hard times. Is the league stepping in to do anything to alleviate that? Can the league step in to do anything to maybe help with that on a short-term basis, or is that just not the type of business that the conference is in necessarily?
No, we've helped out in certain areas. We have a healthy reserve, unlike some conferences. Healthy reserve fund going back a number of years, and we've used that where we had to, and we've helped with testing. And a lot of our schools have made good arrangements for their testing this year. But also, we know they've taken a financial hit, Patrick, in a lot of different ways in a lot of different areas. And the conference, has helped out where it can. I think key is getting back attendance down the road, obviously, and the donor base. A program like East Carolina, though, is getting back on its feet. And remember, our TV deal is kicking in now, and each year our rights fee goes up from ESPN. And that's a significant number over what we had. And, I was talking to one of our former ADs the other day, and, I think this is relevant. He said, you can spend as much money and have a good football or basketball program and spend the same amount of money and have a bad one. It depends on how you evaluate talent, the kind of coaches you have, and can you retain them? And remember now, we're looking at the transfer situation changing dramatically, and the transfer portal being a much bigger issue for all of us. And with the year in residency for a one-time transfer likely to go away, you've got to make sure that your programs are programs that your student athletes, your players want to stay in. And I have mixed feelings about this because, there can be a lot of volatility, and you want stability, and you want, young student athletes to make the right decisions and not to make them, sometimes if you can just transfer and don't have to sit out, you don't have to think about it as much sometimes. And that's a real issue for me. But on the other hand, it's going to mean that we're going to have to do all the things. I think our facilities are good. I think if you went around our league, our facilities are very good. I mean, look, when we first reinvented this league, I mean, look at where Houston was with their arena. I went there once, and maybe, there might be a few people in there. Look at it now. I mean, look at the Fertitta Center, what Tillman Fertitta and Renu Couture and obviously, they've just done, a great job, and they've given Chris Pesman some resources, and he's done a phenomenal job with that program in all sports, not just, basketball, but look at their baseball and track and field and softball and women's basketball really made a tremendous leap. So I think the resources are going to be there to the level we need to compete at the highest level. You could argue that maybe what we've done in football is a bit of a miracle over the last 8 years, because of, the headwinds we faced and how tough it is with, a famous coach once said to me, you don't need as many players in basketball. And if I got a certain number of really good players, I could, I might be able to get to the Final Four. Football is more like a corporation. You've got so many, but we've even done well there. And I think basketball is really on the rise in this conference. I think everybody takes it very seriously. And women's basketball, I think we, obviously just the pure joy of those USF kids the other day, the pure elation winning that championship. And, UCF's got a nice program. When you got Jose Fernandez, I want to congratulate Jose and his team. Jose's a good friend, and he's one of our dean of coaching. And also Katie Abrahamson has done a great job. Michelle Clark-Hurd is building a program in Cincinnati. I could go on and on, but Ron Huey at Houston took that team and they won 15, I think, regular season games. So we've got the resources. I just think it's a matter of time. I really do think we're going to have 5, 6, 7 teams competing pretty regularly for tournament berths. I mean, when you've got pedigree like Wichita, Memphis, Houston, Cincinnati, even Tulsa, look at Tulsa's history and the coaches they've had there, and what SMU's done the last several years. And now that we have Ron Hunter and Joe Dooley and obviously coaches like that at programs that really struggled before, and Temple's got a great history. I just think it's a matter of time for Aaron to get that program to where he wants it to be.
Okay, we'll take the next one from Joseph Duarte from the Houston Chronicle, please.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Joseph, how you doing?
Good, thank you. Thank you for doing this.
My pleasure.
I was curious, just your thoughts on moving forward with the tournament and the pandemic on the bubble situation, or the how the teams are going to go through the protocols similar to the regular season, but in the confined areas that they'll be in one region. Just your thoughts, given what happened, at the ACC tournament and the Big 12 tournament.
Yeah, you're talking about the NCAA.
The NCAA tournament.
Joseph, I really applaud Dan Gavitt and Mitch Barnhart and the committee. They had a tough job. They had to figure out, okay, let's minimize travel. Let's have controlled environments, the best we can do, because we're not the NBA and we can't do the complete bubble. But I think the plan they have is a good one. I think it's going to be tough on the kids because obviously they're going to be pretty confined in some ways. There's no one's arguing that. It's a tough situation. I know some coaches have talked about it. And that this virus you don't know what strain you're dealing with. Is it a more transmissible one? It's so easy to pick up. So you just keep your fingers crossed. Now we're hopeful, we're obviously able to play through our championships here. We were very fortunate, and other conferences probably took very similar precautions and may not have been as fortunate. But the issue is going to be now the next several days too. Once they leave, and they'll be leaving from here for the most part, then they're in the NCAA protocol. And it's a tough protocol. It really is. I don't think they can do much more, Joseph, within the amateur, within the bounds of amateurism and the fact that this is not the NBA, to keep everybody safe. And I think they've worked closely with I think it's Marion County in Indiana to, make sure that everything is really buttoned up. So it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be tough on the kids, and they're bringing academic advisors. They're testing everyone so that you can be an academic advisor and be in the tier 1 34-person group. So we're trying to make sure that the academic aspect of this is not overlooked also. And
We'll go next to Danielle Lerner of the Daily Memphian, please.
Hi, Mike. You mentioned, the difficulty of rescheduling games and, running out of real estate at the end of the season, but I'm just curious if you can shed some light on the decisions to not add for Memphis a second game against Houston or against Wichita State in those last couple of weeks. It seems especially that, that would have helped Memphis, but also a Wichita State game, could have potentially helped the Shockers out now as well.
Yeah, Danielle, we did try, and we weren't necessarily going to force people to do things, but we also ran into a situation where there was a competitive equity issue of teams playing a lot of games on the road consecutively, and also, when you couldn't schedule one game, you couldn't schedule another one either. You had to be fair to each side. I don't really want to get into all the nitty gritty, but it was a challenge. There's no question about it. It was a tough couple of weeks, and sometimes, you're in the middle of this. There's LBJ used to have an old saying, he had a lot of down home sayings, and, he said sometimes, you're kind of getting it from everywhere, and you're sort of like a donkey in a large field in a hailstorm, and you just got to stand there and take it. And sometimes that's the way I felt. But no, essentially, we did look to reschedule certain games, and because of competitive equity and because of trying to be fair to any of the teams, we ended up where we were. We did try to set up some games. We did get Wichita game on the final weekend. Obviously Wichita, Memphis, we weren't able to arrange that, and obviously there was a second Houston Memphis game that didn't get played. But we looked at everything. We talked to our ADs. We tried to work it out the best we could. That's really I want to probably leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go next to Chris Gardner from Houston Roundball Review, please.
Commissioner, how many more years will the conference be at Dickies Arena? Right
now, we've got, I believe, 3 more years, and we will look to extend it. This is a great venue. If they are happy with us, I think I have not heard of a discouraging word. We're out west, and everybody absolutely loves this arena, and they really have enjoyed being here. The locker rooms, the back rooms, the way the arena is run, the way Matt does things. As you know, you come into an arena like this, you've rarely seen one quite like it. And I think our players, our coaches, our administrators, everyone's been coming up to me. Some of the officials have come up to me and said, wow, what a great place, and we're really happy to be doing the event. So yes, we're going to try to, I think we would look to extend it and make this our home. We're in Dallas now, and that's our conference office. It's very economical to have all our people here and to come over, to Fort Worth. And the other great thing about this venue is it is within driving distance. You're talking about SMU being here. You're talking about Wichita, Tulsa, Memphis, Houston being within driving distance, and Cincinnati not that far. The 2 Florida schools, it's not that long a flight. The Dallas-Fort Worth area, the airport is the best situated probably in the country in many respects. So for us, this venue has so many, and the other thing I'll say about the venue is I think that it's going to be a real celebration in the next few years. If the weather's good and if the pandemic is finally over and you've got what I think will be big crowds coming down from the various schools, you've got outdoor areas, you've got great things to do in Fort Worth. That's the other thing. You've got the stockyards, the tourist area. You've got the Kimball and the Amon Carter museums. Amon Carter may have one of the best collections of Western art in the country. You've got the Will Rogers area there. There's a lot to do, a lot of great places to walk, good hotels, good restaurants. This is just a tremendous venue generally for us, and we love the arena. Though you can't say enough about how well run this is, how beautiful it is, how much they put into it. And they just deserve, Matt and his group deserves all the credit. And the people of Fort Worth, the people who put this together, it was a city public-private partnership. We're just thrilled to be here. Thank you.
We'll take the next one from David Richmond from the Sports Objective, please.
Hey, Commissioner, how are you?
How are you, Dave?
Good. I had a question regarding as far as capacity with the crowds. We're talking about finances with, I know for East Carolina, for example, the baseball team is red hot. They're up right now over Charlotte, but just want to get your take on how we can get more fans in the stands. It looks like we're maybe going by in North Carolina up to maybe 50%, hopefully by the end of this month. But I want to get your take on how we can do that so we can have more revenue. And obviously it's nice there are a lot of fans that are not happy, season ticket holders and single ticket holders not happy to be able to go to the games.
Yeah, a lot of that is local and you know, the local health authorities. It's really beyond the conference's control. The one thing though, as you know, Texas opened up things a little more here, but we wanted to be extremely conservative with this tournament. You know, we didn't want to jeopardize in any way any of our team's ability to go to Indianapolis. We thought, you know, the larger crowd could be a little more problematic, so we limited, you know, the number of tickets. But I think down the road, we would certainly like to see things open up. I think our ADs would like to, but they'll work closely with their health authorities. It's really up to them. And it's going to really, the pandemic is going to decide, and the vaccination rate. If we can get everybody vaccinated, I think we've got a good chance to obviously beat this and ultimately, but you're right, it's definitely affected everyone. I don't think there's any question about it. We've had a difficult time. You know, the long-term effects are real of this, and things aren't going to go back to normal. On the other hand, we are finding ways to save money as well. And much as we like the human contact, you know, I think we are going to have more Zoom meetings, and we're probably not going to have as much travel. And we've identified a lot of savings as you go forward. But I just don't, that's really out of our control right now, you know. And you know, somebody said, are you going to have all your coaches, players vaccinated when they're able to be vaccinated? And I said, we will strongly encourage it, but we can't force people to do it. No, we certainly hope they do. Thank you.
We'll take the next one from Eric Lopez, SB Nation, please.
Just wanted to talk about a couple things. The schedule as far as the women's and the men's basketball championships, kind of how they coincided this week. Is this something we'll see moving forward in future years? Also, your thoughts on the TV deal so far this year. Houston and UCF played on ABC, the first game ever for the conference on ABC for basketball. Some of the football games got on ABC. Just your thoughts on the TV deal and the feedback you've gotten so far.
Yeah, I'm really thrilled with the TV deal. You can't have a better partner than ESPN and ESPN ABC. I don't think there's any question. The exposure, first of all, we obviously got exposure in ways we didn't want. You know, obviously no one wanted a pandemic, and we got, you know, scheduling. We had games because of cancellations and other things. We ended up with more games on ABC, more in football, more games on ESPN. And in basketball too, we just were upgraded during this tournament. We didn't, obviously no one wanted to see Duke and Virginia and others have a problem where they couldn't play their games. And we got scheduling, you know, upgrades because of that, which we didn't want. But the point is, ESPN's been great to us generally, and that deal is really, really important to us. I don't think there's any question about it. It's going to underpin our I think the exposure we got when we weren't getting the revenue was really important in building this league. And the other, now that we have exposure and a lot more revenue, we really, you know, quadrupled the revenue, it'll help us. And we also have a chance to generate more down the road, whether it's from the CFP or whether it's from the basketball tournament. Unfortunately, we haven't been generating as many basketball appearances in the tournament as we want to, and we will down the road. And I think that'll help us. Now, there was a first part of your question. What was that one? I'm sorry.
Just about the men's and the women's basketball championships, the way it was scheduled. Is this going to be what we'll foresee in the future?
I've been forgetting some of the names as you've been introduced. You know, I'm so conscious of the question that I'm forgetting names. But yeah, the men and women, I think it's worked out really well. We wanted to have them in the same venue. We thought that would help both sides. And, you know, some of the men followed the women too, and vice versa. We set up the championship game so that, you know, the men's games would lead into it. We thought that would be a good way for TV to handle it. And also for eventually when we have crowds, we think that'll help attendance, you know, for the women's championship game as well, because you've got men's games, you know, that day leading in. You know, it's not just an empty arena during the day. You know, we had a great run at Mohegan because of UConn, the UConn women. Obviously, you know, we were getting the biggest crowds probably in all of women's college basketball. You know, we'd probably average somewhere in 30,000 people for that tournament. But with UConn gone, it made no sense to be there anymore. And I think having the women and the men together makes it more of a festive. And there are economies of scale, you know, in terms for all of us. I think it worked out well. I think that the way we scheduled the women to start the week and the way the men, picked up, I don't know that we would change anything. I think it's worked out really well. We gave enough flexibility. Years ago, I was, I think I was at CBS at the time, and the Pac-12 had the women's championship on the same day as the men. I think because I think it was scheduled fairly close together, there was an overtime once that really, could have caused an issue. I think you learn from things, and I remember being in the CBS studio, I remember that, and we made sure there was enough cushion. So we thought we got, the women started at 9, right? The earlier game was at 6. So we think that worked out really well, and we'll continue to do it.
Try to get a couple more in. We'll go to Mitch Davis, please, for the next one.
Commissioner, first, before I get to my question, I want to speak for all of us. We want to thank you for your leadership throughout this entire pandemic. I know it's been a stressful job, but you've done a heck of a job at leading this conference and leading overall college athletics, and your leadership has been awesome throughout this pandemic. Now to my question, Commissioner, I want to ask you about the future of the American athletic, because, right now you mentioned a little bit with the pandemic, everything was going great before the pandemic, but post-COVID, Commissioner, talk about the future of the American athletic and kind of go in detail a little bit of how excited you are for this, the future of the American Athletic Conference.
Well, first of all, thanks for the kind words, Mitch, but really the credit really goes to our administrators, our teams, and our coaches and our players, of course, but also our medical advisory group primarily. We put that together back in, I believe, probably April or early May, and they did a phenomenal job. And it was dicey whether we were going to play football at all, as you know, especially when the Big Ten and the Pac-12 dropped out. And our fellows, our medical people, had been tracking myocarditis for a long time, and they weren't swayed. When that came up as the issue, one of the issues where the Big Ten wasn't going to play, they felt that they had examined it carefully, and we brought in a nationally renowned cardiologist to talk to our group. And we ultimately, I agonized over this along with our presidents and our ADs. This was not an easy decision because there's still a lot of unknowns at the time, but we felt that it was going to be safer in the protocols than outside them. That the virus, it turned out we had no evidence of transmission on the field in football, and we're not really sure about basketball, but the point is we didn't really feel that was going to be the issue. And we felt that it was typically gatherings after games with family, friends, sometimes when people, were out on leave or vacation, that's when it would crop up. And it might have happened anyway, may well have. And also, then you don't have the screening, you don't have the medical attention that you would have normally. You wouldn't necessarily even determine that myocarditis might be an issue. All of our student athletes were screened for that if they got COVID. And so and so many of these cases were asymptomatic, that the kids might have been spreading it to elderly, family and friends. You just don't know. The point is, I think they were safer in our protocols ultimately, and our doctors felt the same way. They felt pretty strongly about that. And so we decided to play, and basketball's been even more of a challenge because you're playing indoors. We did a lot of work with the protocols, distancing, all the different things you've seen. It's been a little more challenging. We'll do studies to make sure that, we really didn't have transmission on the court because, if you did, I think you would have seen a lot more cases in terms of when you did have cases, you would have seen a lot more. And every case is bad. You don't want any, obviously, but we trace things to gatherings outside. Now, in terms of and appreciate your kind words, but it has been a challenge without question. But I think we erred on the side of caution. We postponed some football games that we could have played, but we felt we've got to watch out. There might be a breakout. We don't know. We've got a few cases. Okay, we've done the contact tracing, we've isolated, but we're just not sure. We've got a few days still to go. And we decided that in certain cases not to play games. And the same thing with basketball, programs shut down when maybe they could have continued because we really wanted to be extra cautious. Our medical group was fantastic. I can't say enough about Dr. Greg Stewart and some of the other doctors that we had on this group. In terms of the future of the conference, you know me. I mean, I've been a great promoter of the conference. That goes without saying. But I am bullish on our prospects. Again, what we've done, I think, is pretty remarkable over 8 years. Going on 9 years now. When we started, as you know, we were given up for dead, and people thought we wouldn't even stay together, and they didn't think we had any prospects at all. And look what happened. And we right away, right out of the gate, we won the Fiesta Bowl and national championships in football, in basketball, men's and women's. And from then on, it's been a top 10 team pretty much every year in football. It's been multiple top 25 teams. Basketball, we've been very good. We just have had heartbreak after heartbreak. That Houston, Michigan game a few years ago, the Houston, Kentucky game a few years ago, the Cincinnati game with Nevada, the Cincinnati game with St. Joe's, the SMU games, especially that UCLA one, with the goaltending. We've had a lot of heartbreak in this conference. We've had teams that could easily have gone to the Elite Eight or even the Final Four. We've had players, when Emmanuel Mudiay decided to go to China, and play there. We didn't expect that. And Larry Brown was building something pretty special at SMU, which Tim Jankovich has continued. So we've had good basketball. Wichita, we added them, and they've been a terrific team. We have had four tournament teams from time to time. So this basketball is very good. Our women's basketball will now improve. We obviously had the best when we had UConn. In terms of the conference, we're at a crossroads, though. I'll be honest with you. We need to, and I always am. I try to be. We have a difficult. We've got to get out of the group of five, and I've made that point. We don't belong there. It's clear. We just don't belong. No one can argue that this league belongs there. In terms of every metric, we did 34 metrics, whether it's, the record we've compiled, we have a 700 something record against the G5. We've played almost 50 games against the P5. We've had 5 top 10 football wins against the P5. No G5 conference has any against them other than us. We have been to 6 out of the 8 years bowl games. One was an old BCS game. We've won 3 of those and should have won 4. We should have won the one this past year. You saw how good Cincinnati is. And we've had multiple teams that have been good. We've had multiple teams. We've had 4 teams go to New Year's bowl games. Look at basketball now, what we're building at places like Houston. Now, we did lose UConn, but we'll surmount that. That's something, in our league, we have developed really good teams. And you see Houston and you see Wichita and you see, Memphis and, these programs really care, Cincinnati and others. And then you look at Tulane going out and hiring a Ron Hunter and Joe Dooley at East Carolina. I went through all that. I think there's a great future for this league. We've got great Olympic sports as well. Football tends to drive everything, as you know. And so we are going to have to figure it out. If the playoff expands, we are going to have to fight hard for an automatic bid, because a 2-loss team in our conference, I think, is often the best team in the so-called group of 5. We got lumped into that, back at the very beginning when, again, people weren't even sure our conference would survive. And we've clearly, outgrown it. We have big, important schools. UCF has one of the biggest enrollments in the country. It may now be the biggest. We have, a TV deal that gives us tremendous, as you know, exposure. We're in many of the top 10 markets in the country. When you're in Texas and you're in Ohio and you're in Florida and you're in Tennessee and you're in Louisiana, Louisiana has the highest per capita number of football recruits in the country, then you're in the right places. And maybe even the transfer portal will help us in some ways because kids want to come back home. I see a bright future for the league, but we are at a turning point, Mitch. We definitely have to get out of the situation we're in. We just don't want that to continue because, as you know, it's very frustrating. And when they talk about non-power and then you win a championship or you win a big bowl game or you do the things we're doing, of course you're powerful. And that it's a term, unfortunately, that got coined and we have to deal with it. But I think the future is bright. I really do. But we are at a crossroads and we've got to figure out in the next year or two, if that playoff gets expanded, we've got to be at the table and we're trying to figure out what our strategy is going to be. We obviously want to be a part of that autonomy group too. It affects us academically in terms of, recruitment and retention of students. We want to make sure that I don't want any athlete or student athlete or any student in a general student body, as well as our student athletes, to ever feel that in any way, because they're not in the so-called P5, that they're somehow a second-class citizen. There's no way I ever want that. And that's what I fought for, tooth and nail for so many years. And I think we've accomplished that. I think we've been relevant nationally in a big way, but we now have to take that next step because, you can plateau with this whole G5 business, and that's what we have to fight.
Okay, we have time for one more. We'll go to Chris Gardner for the last one, please.
Commissioner, have all the member schools made their upgrades for ESPN Plus digital studios?
Yeah, Chris, we did a lot of events this year, and we lost some too. But yes, they all have done that, and they've all done it in different ways. Some have, built their own facilities. Some have built facility, but hired others to help out, had hired third parties. But they're producing at a good level. You're going to have some issues here and there, but they've done a really good job considering the dislocation of this year. But yes, they have. They're all up to speed. They've all been producing events for ESPN Plus, and the events that ESPN has been produced for ESPN Plus, the quality has been spectacular. ESPN Plus is really now. I don't know exactly, Chuck. I don't know if you know exactly how many homes, but it keeps growing. They combined it with Disney in many ways. The marketing of it. It's going to continue to grow. We think it is. Look at the Paramount Plus now and all these other streaming services. This is clearly the NFL is thinking about a Thursday streaming, a stream game. This is where it's going. I don't think it was there was some concern, Chris, when we first, did that deal about ESPN Plus, but we have more linear cable and ABC appearances than we had in the previous deal, on top of the other sports being on ESPN Plus. Now, I've gotten a lot of feedback from people who say, we love it because for a reasonable price, we can watch all the games. And you can get an icon on your TV. You can figure out how to get it on your TV if you want. But just watching it even on your computer, on your laptop, on your iPhone, the quality is really good. And you can watch all the games. We were on some networks before, that weren't available in half the country. So if it wasn't available in your area, you were out of luck. In addition, a lot of our Olympic sports just did not get the kind of attention that they're getting now. We're going to do 1,000 events eventually for ESPN Plus, annually. So it's really incumbent on our schools to embrace it, and they have, and they've all spent the money. We certainly were able to help out in that regard, and now that they've got those plans in place, Chris, they can use them for other things too. They can do academic exercises on these. They can do other things around their campuses that don't necessarily involve sports. So having those kinds of facilities on your campus, it's where the future is, and I'm pleased that we did it. I'm pleased that our schools have done it, and they have.
Chuck, if I may follow up real quick,
Sure.
Commissioner, do you know are there any plans or discussions for the schools to have their own original content on ESPN Plus?
Yeah, they certainly could, and ESPN Plus would be happy to do that. And in addition, Chris, we have a studio now in our new office in Dallas, and we're going to do some original content. Absolutely are. And part of it too, we are thinking about, as part of our racial equality group, which we started, in the wake of the George Floyd tragedy. We're going to do some historical work and do some documentaries on the history of race relations in the country. And what we found with our student athletes is they're eager to learn. They're eager to know more about a Frederick Douglass. About most, obviously they weren't born when Martin Luther King was doing what he did for civil rights, but there are many more people who we're going to start a Trailblazer Award, and as part of that we're going to do some documentaries. That's the kind of thing we can do, and we can use our studio also to do original content. And if our schools do original content, ESPN Plus has said we would be happy to entertain putting it on. Now again, that'll be up to individual circumstances to some extent. I can't make broad statements, but yes, it can be done.
Great. Mike, thanks so much for the time today. We'll let everybody get prepared for the championship game, which starts about a half an hour, and we'll be back following the games with the coaches and student athletes press conference. But thank you again for Mike for the time and for the members of the media for joining us.
No, thanks to the members of the media. I really appreciate the interest you take in our conference. I think it'll be a really competitive game today, but we're pleased that the teams got through to this point and can play. You know, one last thing I'll say, Chuck, and thanks again for the time, fellas, everybody here on the call. There was a mental health aspect to playing this year too that really was important to us. If we could do it safely, you know, if we could play safely, and you know, the student athletes really wanted to play. You know, and if they didn't want to play, they could opt out. And we were very encouraging. If they didn't want to play, we made sure that they felt that was absolutely a decision that we would support. And we did have, you know, one women's team decided not to continue. We had some players in football, you know, probably, you know, more football players, obviously, than basketball players. So we had a few more that opted out, and that was fine. But the ones who remained really wanted to play, and it meant a lot to them. And one of the cardiologists said to us, you know, I've dealt with student athletes who I had to tell couldn't play anymore because they had certain heart conditions. And he said, I know how devastating it can be. And the fact that they live for this, they work so hard, you know, they make sure that, you know, they're doing well in school. They want to be able to play. Giving them the opportunity was important. Now, again, there's no high fives or anything like that because this was a tough thing to get through, but we are pleased that they were able to do it. And our basketball teams got to this point. We're able to crown a champion and hope that we have a few that are able to go to Indianapolis and compete. So again, I applaud all of them for all the hard work they had. You think about the stress, got some players maybe coming through the tunnel, but you think about the stress of thousands and thousands of tests all year, not knowing how those results are going to be, knowing that you could be asymptomatic and get a positive test, and getting through and playing as well and as hard as they did. It's not an easy thing. And I have nothing but admiration for them, their coaches, and our administrators. But thanks again, and I hope we have a good one this afternoon. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chuck, for arranging it. And thanks to Tom here also. Thank you.